Gregory Gerfo, Terrorism by Charles Townshend. Chapter 3. The origins of terrorism came from the French Revolution, which led up to modern-day terrorism. With the Crusades and Millennials fighting against the infidels, Eugene Walter's work on terrorism focused on the operation of power in primitive societies to challenge the liberal assumption that naked violence can never result in stability of a political regime. This was because it was important to recognize the role of violence in politics. The problem was that the issue were framed into two groups of absolutes or opposites. Those considered counter-revolutionaries were labeled as monsters, fierce beast leeches, because of their opposing beliefs. This provided an ideological charter for the most extreme actual but must have been justifiable. When the counter-revolutionary rebellion at Lyon ended, the goal was to get rid of fascism. This is the extinction of religion. Purges what permitted massacres like the assaults on the rebellion by the Republican Army, which was labeled as a genocide. Three motives can be identified in doing this: vengeance, intimidation, and purification. Done so through pontiff, will the more general the level, the more violence occurred to promote presence, and the violence was not personal but a mean of recognition. In red, black, and white terror, the question remains whether this was a continued system of regime or terror. Because of the French Revolution's unpredicted use of violence, a model was created for multiple centuries of terrorizing the mass public. The comparison of Stalin and Hitler were used to observe whether their acts were considered terroristic or just inhumane acts of violence or genocide. Hitler was very focused on the concept of purification, but not of virtue, just blood. Arndt touched up on the fact that these forms of terrorism were used to make his victims feel isolated and attempt to attract these people to join the movements. Townshend attempted to portray the origins of terror in this chapter. Chapter 4. Revolutionary Terrorism. In Chapter 4, Townshend observes two ages of terrorism and the difference between them. He once again looks at Eugene Walter's work, second category of political violence, The Siege of Terror, which looks at how terrorism is conceived as a strategy of assault on the state. The first age of terrorism is conceived as a strategy of assault on the state. The first age of terrorism took place in the late half of the 19th century, and the individual terror is a key indicator of modern violence. Revolutionary terrorism has been used in the past centuries in three political contexts, some of which included in-state terrorism, nation as a whole, and external third-party terrorism. In the early 19th century, terrorism was relatively new. With this in mind, the Italian propaganda by deed is a good place to begin. This outlined many terrorist acts of which controlled and ruled a nation. This led from nation to nation, as in Russia, Prince Kropotkin provided new acts of terror and to become a hero. These strong-arm tactics were to kill and make a statement, will be known for it. As many of these parties in Europe declined, there was a new age in which was Vietnam, Cuba, and Palestine.